What's up, guys? It's Jerry Mason, the Kickin lawyer again. So today's video is going to be another one in my DUI defense series. This would be the second one in the series, and this one is going to cover how to beat the standardized field sobriety test that you might face on a DUI traffic stop. So I'll remind you of a couple of things real quick. Number one, don't drink and drive. So the number one way to beat a DUI is to don't drink and drive. All my DUI videos, you'll find that information up front because, clearly that is the most effective way to not be arrested for DUI, not hurt anyone, and of course not have to face the legal entanglements that accompany a DUI arrest. So with that said, another thing is I was a police officer for quite some time. I was a deputy sheriff for 10 years full-time, 12 years total. I was reserved for a couple of years too on either end. And I had a very, very good DUI conviction rate. I was very good at stopping cars and arresting people for DUI, and then usually had a really good follow-through rate where they were convicted. Because of that, I learned how to obviously teach and administer DUI stops and the field sobriety and whatnot, but I also have a good idea of how to beat them. And now on the other side, doing criminal defense, I've got a pretty good track record of having successful DUI defense. Matter of fact, that's one of the cornerstones of the practice here at the Huffman Mason firm, is doing DUI defense. So with that said, last thing, always remember that I am a Tennessee licensed attorney, so the advice I give, although it can generally be applied in any jurisdiction, is usually specific to Tennessee. So, with that said, the second thing on the series here, we start with the implied consent, which is a little out of order. And this is still probably out of order because, they've already stopped you. We're going to go over ways to prevent that in another video. But standardized field sobriety tests. Why are they called SFST, standardized field sobriety tests? Well, the reason for that is NHTSA is the National Highway Traffic Administration, has standardized under their guidelines certain tests that law enforcement can do roadside, and based on certain cues or clues that the officers look for, will help the officer assess whether or not you are impaired while operating a motor vehicle, either under the influence of alcohol or drugs or whatever. There are usually three that are considered the standard ones, although throughout the history of law enforcement, there have been a lot that have been used. I even myself did the three standard ones and then would do a couple of others that I just picked up that I thought were a good way to assess someone's alcohol level. All right, so and these usually appear in this order, but they could be changed. It just depends on the jurisdiction, and again, they may do some different ones. So the first standard field sobriety test is HGN. That's horizontal gaze and nystagmus, okay? And what they do, this is the one you see where they pull someone out, standing on the roadside or somewhere, and they hold a stylus or pen or their finger in front of their face, and then they're moving it back and forward, asking the person to watch their finger or stylus or whatever with their eyes, and then sometimes they'll move it up and down. So there's a certain way that test has to be administered. Currently in Tennessee, and there are other states, that test is not even admissible in court. So the officer can do it to try to sort of give an assessment of what he thinks and feels, but it's not something that they can actually use in court. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time addressing it. However, I will say this, based on my personal opinion and probably most police officers' opinion, the HGN is probably the most effective one on determining your blood alcohol level. The kicking part of this is I'm a big martial arts guy, and so I'm relatively coordinated, and all these field sobriety tests are just coordination tests. And as with anything that's coordination-based, with practice you can improve. Well, my coordination is relatively good, so a lot of times I would be used, even intoxicated, to do these field sobriety tests, and I could pass all of them with limited or no cues that wouldn't show impairment except the HGN. Because the HGN, the horizontal gaze and nystagmus portion, is a physiological response, is what they're looking for, that your body gives from, and I don't know that you can fake it or cover it up, from the effects of alcohol or drugs in your blood system when you're impaired. And all nystagmus is an involuntary jerking of the eyes. So the eyes will do some kind of twitching or jerking or whatnot. And I mean, you can see it in anybody, even after one drink, you can see depending on what it is. So that's what they're looking for when they move the stylus. There's a couple of different cues specifically they're looking for: the onset of nystagmus, prior to 45 degrees, and various terms they'll use. But basically, it's to see the eye jerk. Okay, when they go vertical, that's usually to look for drug activity. A DRE, a drug recognition expert, a lot of times will be able to testify to what type of drug and whatever's in your system on that end. Anyway, so that's the HGN one. Not admissible in Tennessee right now. However, they will do it. Another one you'll see is the 9-step heel to toe. Now, this is one where they kill a lot of people on. The 9-step heel to toe is where you take the steps 9 steps forward and then you do a certain type of turn 9 steps back. So this is important, all right? If you were to do this field sobriety test, what they're looking for, again, are certain cues or clues to determine if you're under the influence. And on this step, it's anything from during the instructional phase, where they'll usually have you stand with one leg in front of the other leg while they talk to you. If you're not able to stand on a line with one leg in front of the other leg and you fall off line or something, they say that that's a cue. That's one of the clues they look for. If you don't step heel to toe on each step, if you don't turn correctly, if you raise your hands or if you sway, there are different cues on their sheet they have that they look for to determine if they think you're intoxicated based on that one. And you only have to show X number of cues for them to say, oh, that means that he must be intoxicated. There's a certain percentage that if you show those cues, it means you're probably intoxicated or impaired, I should say, not so much intoxicated, but impaired. It affects your ability to drive. So there are several defenses we use on those. For instance, it needs to be on a level ground. Was the pavement level? Was it a straight line for real? Did they have a light in your eyes? Did they have their strobes going? Things like that would affect you. Did they let you take your socks and your shoes off to walk? Do you have heels on? Was it super cold that night? Just there's several things that we look at on the defense side, and I'll get to the ultimate defense here in a second at the end. So that would be the 9-step heel to toe and the cues they look for. So one of the keys to avoid to do well on that one is don't show the cues. Make sure hands are by your side, your head stays straight, you're able to stand nice and still, all those kind of things. But I'll give you the real defense here in a second, okay, to all of them. The next is the one-leg stand. Usually it's the one-leg stand. Sometimes I think it's rhomboid is the way you pronounce it. A balance test. But the one-leg stand is where the hands are by your side, you stand with your feet together, and then you have to elevate one foot, and it's usually to hold it for 30 seconds or to simulate what you think is 30 seconds. You're supposed to hold your foot up like 6 inches off the ground and simulate all that, and the cop will usually time you and see if you can do it, or to see if your estimation of the time is correct, because sometimes if you're impaired, your ability to estimate time may be off. And so that one they're looking for cues too. Are you swaying? Do you put your foot down? How many times you put your foot down? Are you able to simulate time? Do you raise your hands for balance? Things like that. So you want to avoid showing those cues. All right, so I'm going to give you the big cue here in a second, okay? The big key to beating these tests. So real quick, there are other tests that they may administer. For instance, they may go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was a little dexterity test I used to do. They may make you count forward or backwards from certain numbers to another number, like count from 22 to 34 or from 47 to 20 or something like that, one backwards. They may do the same thing with the alphabet, see if you're able to do that up and down, just to kind of get an idea of how they do. They look for other cues too to add, and they're technically field sobriety tests, which is how'd you get out of the car, how'd you pull over, things like that. All these things are coordination tests, okay? So here's the big key. Number one, I say don't ever do the field sobriety test. Don't do them. You don't have to do the field sobriety tests. If you do the field sobriety test and you're not used to them or haven't done them before, you're not going to do well. You can be completely sober and you're not going to do well on the field sobriety test because they're coordination tests that you haven't practiced. So the lawyer advice is don't do the field sobriety. If you're super coordinated and you just think, or you haven't been drinking at all and you want to, throw it out there, it's fine. But they're, of course, going to use it against you. The video of you doing it's going to come into court. And if you're not doing well, they're going to try to point out these errors you make. That would be another way is maybe practice. It sounds silly, but I'll do another video soon on actually how they're administered. And then you can practice doing them the correct way that they're administered. But, in this case, I don't know that it's a good idea to drink and practice them and think that's going to make it better. I think the best thing is just, don't drink and drive, number one, but number two, just don't do them. Just don't worry about the field sobriety test. Now, are you going to go to jail if you don't do them? Maybe, if they feel like they've made enough of assessment of other factors. But I guarantee you this, if you do them and don't do them well, even if you're sober, they're probably going to take you to jail because they'll feel like that's enough for their probable cause standard. They're going to take you to jail. So, as I stated up front, don't drink and drive. That would be the number one defense. If you do get caught with whatever and get charged with a DUI or any type of offense, please feel free to contact our firm. And as always, you can like, subscribe, and comment to these videos that I make. Be glad to hear from you guys. I've gotten a lot of new subscribers and comments in the last month or so. There's also a secret hidden on my YouTube channel on how to get a free Kicking Lawyer t-shirt. And I'd be glad to send you guys one of those if you can figure out the secret of how to get it. It's hidden in amongst videos and comments and stuff on the videos, so you'll have to piece it together. But anyway, until the next time, I hope you stay safe. If you need something, feel free to reach out to us. Hope you have a good weekend. I'm talking to you on a Friday, and I'll talk to you next time.